In the last segment, we heard from Journal News reporters Mark Lungariello and Chris Eberhart as they dug into a cold case in Mamaroneck where Stephen Spina was killed in his own apartment. And 10 years later, the case remains unsolved. Mark and Chris, they join us now. For folks who aren't familiar with Mamaroneck, this isn't the kind of community or town here that this is anywhere expected or normal. In many ways, 10 years later, it still has lingering effects, not just for the immediate family, for the broader community.
That's right. There's this kind of, they like to build themselves as the friendly village. It's something that over the years has been on the stationary of village government. And they really, you know, they're not used to homicide investigations. And I don't mean necessarily the department, but the village as a whole. And the way the mayor described it to me, Mayor Norm Rosenblum, actually says, well, this is kind of always in the back of people's minds. And that's not just the immediate family. There's this lingering sense of a lack of closure for everyone from the mayor down to, like, you know, the family. So.
And we'll get into the conversation you guys had with the detective in this case, and clearly this still eats at him 10 years later. But Chris, let's talk about the family, the Spina family, because the daughter wasn't even a teenager when she lost her father, and now as a young adult, this anniversary in some ways even more painful than others because it's a big number here, 10 years that has been lost. The family wants closure. They've helped along with the town, putting up a sizable reward to try and get this. Just how much of an open wound is it for this family? Because by all accounts, this guy was a really well-liked guy here. Even the police department knew him well, postal worker. He was a big part of the fabric of the community.
He was very well-liked. The family, I thought an interesting quote from the daughter from Skylar, who's been phenomenal throughout the whole process, but she had said that she doesn't really talk about it much with her family, except for with her mother and her boyfriend. So I think the family itself really is looking for closure, and she said she wants to get more closure for Stephen's mother, for her grandmother. I guess she's the one that's hurting the most out of the whole family.
And the detective in this case, Mark, to me, remarkably open about this. He was the acting detective at the time. His partner, at the time at least, since retired, he's got a new partner on this. He says he keeps 2 case files with him at all times on this. But he would have thought they would have had more success to this point, but there just hasn't been any eyewitnesses. And surprising because, as we mentioned, very well-liked guy, and this was in an area where you would have think more people would have seen it, but to this point, nothing.
No, and this is part of the reason why I think that they're very open about the case. There's someone out there that knows something. That's the theory. Obviously, whoever was in that room knows what happened, and maybe some other people too. And the thing that we really wanted to stress with the detective, he's kind of saying, well, look, if you know something and you think we already know it, don't assume that. Call us and let us know. So yeah, I think that by putting this out there, now it's obviously an anniversary, but by keeping it out there, there's more of a chance that someone will see something or recognize something or think that maybe now's the time to do it. So I think that the detective, and you know, the detective says, even if he ends up retiring, he says this will be a case that he'll still be working on in his mind and maybe actively calling.
And to that point, though, while they say there seemed to be no forced entry, Chris, at the same time, they're saying they are withholding some information. We don't know about the murder weapon. We don't know about the details at the time. Why are police keeping that information so close to the vest?
Well, a lot of details like that, how many times that Stephen was stabbed, what the murder weapon was, where he was, if he was face up, face down, that kind of details, only the killer is going to know. So the police are keeping that in their back pocket to, you know, as part of their investigation, and hopefully that somebody will say something that hasn't been released, and that way they know who their suspects are.
And finally, to this point, we mentioned the reward, and also we're going to give literally the telephone number of the detective who's been working this case who wants any tips here that can come his way. Nonetheless, here, it's kind of, they're hoping new science might help here with the physical evidence, right? Because even though 10 years doesn't seem to be an eternity where, you know, we are talking about in the 21st century when this happened, nonetheless, there's been advances, right? Potentially more stuff could be gleaned here, or maybe somebody's got a record now if there's a connection with any DNA or whatever else, but they're going to retest some of this stuff too.
There's a district attorney's cold case team or unit that is giving fresh eyes to it. To the extent that there are new developments, I mean, this is 10 years ago. I don't know that we'll see a break in the case with DNA or any type of new testing equipment, but there's certainly, by having Westchester County's cold case group look at this, that maybe there will be something new that maybe they didn't have 10 years ago they could use.
And they've had people and persons of interest in this, and they still have some people in mind, or maybe acquaintances of those people right now. But the reason they came to you guys and were as open as they were is they're not close to cracking this, right?
There is no one who's been eliminated from their list of persons of interest.
Amazing. 10 years later, and especially for folks who know Mamaroneck, this is a still open conversation that's happening, especially to somebody who is as well liked.
I thought.
Yes, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I thought one thing that was really interesting, though, that there's not necessarily closer to cracking it, but after 10 years, they do have a new theory that they recently have been working on, and a lot of that has just been with working with the DA's office with fresh eyes and going through, rereading all witness statements and stuff like that, and they actually are working on a new theory as of right now.
And of course, I know you guys will. We will as well keep updated on this, but they can certainly use your help here. As a reminder, you can read this story on LoHUD starting tomorrow, and then there'll be a special report that will be available in the Journal News this Sunday, September 17th. And as I said, the exact day of Stephen Spina's death 10 years ago. All right, coming up next, everyone, things they are heating up in the trial of New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez. Alleged girlfriends of the New Jersey Democrats co-defendant. They take the stand now, and prosecutors say these women connect a lot of dots.